All right, we are live. One more edition of the Ipêcast. Just our
Everybody.
space. Yes, just our main space to discuss about technology, network states, startup cities, internet native institutions. What is coming next? The nation state. So we are seeing these nation states are hundreds of years old, very obsolete, and now we have like powerful technologies to experiment new governance models, new economic models. So we are bringing these builders in the space to teach us and show us what they are building in this space. Today we have a very special guest, Valerio Leo, the founder and CEO of RayCash. He's building an app for private money. So it's the second week that we are talking about privacy, which is a very hot topic within the crypto ecosystem. And basically is how to transact stable coins with privacy, which is very, very important for the digital economy as a whole, but the crypto and blockchains, because they are public, it's a missing layer, it's a missing piece in this space. So we are going to discuss a bit more the impact also of these privacy layers into the future and understand the technical side of it. Before introducing Valerio, just a quick note. I don't know, probably everyone knows about IP Village already, but we are very close. On April 6th to May 1st, we are hosting the second edition of IP Village, which is Brazil's largest pop-up city. This year is very special. We are hosting 3 hacker houses, so one on-chain house, AI house, and privacy house in Florianópolis, in the south of Brazil. So the idea is just bringing hundreds of talents and builders to discuss, to learn, to connect, and mainly prototype tools and services for an internet native city, for a city for the AI and on-chain era. So during this almost 1 month, we are going to prototype a lot of tools and experiment with these building blocks. And Zama and RayCash is one of these building blocks. He's one of our key tech partners, but also LLMs and ID, digital ID, and many other technologies. So it's if you love technology, you are enthusiastic about technology, I think there's no other place to be in April. So let's jump right in. Welcome, Valerio. Very excited to have you on the show.
My pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to IP Village. It's going to be amazing. So maybe a quick intro about privacy, about what I do with RayCash, and what sits at the core of RayCash, both in terms of philosophy and in terms of technology. Before we get into that, maybe it's worth spending a bit of time also talking about this new phenomenal technology that powers RayCash, which is called fully homomorphic encryption. And fully homomorphic encryption is something that has been in academia for decades, and only recently, thanks to a company called Zama, has become something that can be used in production to a level that we thought it was not possible before. And there is a reason why this technology is called in the circles the holy grail of cryptography, because it kind of makes it possible to do things that really change the paradigm of how we deal with data and encrypted data. So what is fully homomorphic encryption? Fully homomorphic encryption is a way to encrypt data such that you can still do computation over that encrypted data without revealing the data itself. So an analogy with which is common with ZK, right? Is that I know people are more familiar with that. You know that ZK is a way to prove a secret without revealing the secret, whilst FHE is a way to use that secret without revealing it. And that makes it very powerful because you can imagine that you can run computations in the same way that you are used to, with the same semantics, calling the same functions, but the data that you want to keep encrypted remains encrypted, and no one except the person that encrypted is able to decrypt it, even if you can offset to other people the ability to compute over that. And this is the perfect use case for blockchain use. Why is this so important for blockchain? Because we know that one of the most important promises of blockchain, the fundamental promise of blockchain, is the ability to verify all the computations. That's why smart contracts are so important, because the computations are public, all the steps are visible by everybody. And so if you could rerun the same smart contracts, but in a way where you see the steps, but you don't see the single slots where the amounts are, where the numbers are, where the data is, but you're guaranteed that at the end the result is mathematically sound, then you can already think of all the consequences of that. Now, we can basically rebuild on-chain with the guarantees of blockchain, which is the trustless execution, a guaranteed result, without revealing what we are computing on. And the most immediate use cases, of course, are finance. We can think of the biggest use case right now is to take all the existing ERC20 tokens and wrapping them into the confidential twin. Basically, is like wrapping, for crypto people that might be more familiar, when you wrap your Ether into wrapped Ether, is basically the digital twin of your Ether. The same thing happens with confidential tokens. You can wrap the existing tokens and receive a confidential token that has the same semantics of ERC20, so that all of us developers that are very familiar with all the function names, all the way they interact with that, doesn't really change them much. But the only thing that changes is that now the amount, if you go on the block explorer and look at the amounts, it'll look like gibberish. And you can think that if you expand that to many other domains, now you can replicate all the most important domains of finance, of voting, of governance, very important even for the pop-up city and network states. So you can replicate all these functions without leaking any important information, but without trusting anybody for the computation of this data. So I think that it's something that excites me a lot, because we never had the opportunity to do something like this before. And I see that as the perfect use case for solving the biggest problems that we have at the moment. I'm going to go more in details with the stable coins usage in the world. So one of the biggest frameworks that I use when I talk about stable coins is what I call the stablecoin trilemma. So if we all see how much stable coins are all over the place, everybody wants to use them. Institution, we see big corporation buying multi-million-dollar startups because they do stable coins, and it's all great. But if you go to categorize them, they all fall in under this trilemma. And so the trilemma says that you can only have 2 out of 3 properties so far. And the 3 properties are self-custody, privacy, or banking functions. Right? So you can have very good privacy and self-custody. You can think of things like, for example, Tornado Cash, privacy pools, Aztec, Monero. That there are a lot of very good self-custodial privacy tools that work amazingly, and that is their original sin. The problem is that these tools work too well to the point that you become unbankable. So you cannot take your hard-earned stable coins that you run through Tornado Cash or privacy pools and go easily to somebody that's going to give you a card or a bank account to deposit those stable coins. And that really sucks, of course. There are a million legitimate usage for these tools, but the financial institutions don't reason in that way. They reason by risk. They reason by, I am the compliance officer, I got a family, I don't want to go to jail. And so they always take the path of least resistance. They don't take the risk, and they are not willing to associate the name of their companies to these protocols and to anything that comes with them. So one side of this triangle is this one. The other side is you can have privacy and you can have banking functions. So you can have your data not being public on a blockchain, and you can have you can have a card, you can have a bank account, and those are all the amazing companies that we are seeing now being born in the so-called the neo banks, right? So you can think of, for example, products like Cast, great tool, great user experience. You can think of what Stripe is building for enterprise, where they receive your stable coins and then they send them to you. So there are a lot of tools built on this side of the triangle, but of course they come at the cost of self-custody, because they take all your money, they accept the money for you, they clear it for you, but that means they also, as we say, not your keys, not your crypto. So you always depend on these third parties that most of the times are, again, amazing companies, great innovators, in good faith, but they're still subject to the same problems that we see in corporations, which is mistakes or political problems or changes in regulation. So you expose yourself to uncertainty because you don't have self-custody. And then there is the last part, which is banking and self-custody. And that means you're giving up your privacy. And which companies are in this category? Well, we see all the wallets with a card. So you can have things like MetaMask, Gnosis Pay, you can have EtherFi. So these are companies that I salute. They really push the space forward. They brought some innovation. They were the first one to bring usability to people's holdings, and that's great. But of course, it is unthinkable for people to run their finance on a public ledger, and there's a lot of reasons. But even if you were to accept and say, oh, you know what, I really don't care if people see how much I spend or how much I earn, on a principle level, which I find it very unlikely. But even if you were to be that type of person, it remains still a very safety concern on your physical level, because we see that happening all the time. People being targeted because of their crypto holdings. And once something happens to you, once you are forced to give up your crypto, there's no way to get it back. So the last thing you want is a target over your head, which contains your address and your balance on Etherscan. So this is a bit the status quo of stablecoins. And I think that until we solve this, there's no way that self-custodial privacy is going to go mainstream for payments. And I think it would be a big shame, because we don't want to replicate the model that crypto was born to fight in the first place. So we don't want that, because we want everybody wants privacy and everybody wants banking, then we need to fall back into the custodial model that we are trying to avoid in the first place. So this is where we are. And why the time here today is different. What is changing now with RayCash or with companies like RayCash? that finally it's a combination of things. First of all, is more education on the regulation level. Finally, there are regulators that are really willing to listen. There's more opening towards crypto, and that is absolutely positive. But there's only one part, because then you need to convince. Once you convince the regulators, the public sector, now you need to convince also the private sector, and that means convincing, for example, all the tooling and think of all the analytic toolings to start working with privacy coin, not only for saying this transaction has a risk score which is very high, but also to investigate better, such that you can also give a reason why that is not a risky transaction. And that requires some investment in a niche that is still not very valuable for some of these companies, but that is very important for the space to move forward. So then the final step is what I hinted before, the advance of fully homomorphic encryption. And I will stop here to know if you have any question, etc., and then we can go more into details and why I think that is the final leap to make privacy working with all the compliance requirements. I'll stop for a second first.
No, amazing. You can go ahead. I think we can close the thought explaining the technology.
Cool. So what FHE makes it possible is to have all your encrypted data living now on a public ledger, because it's encrypted. So you don't have to worry about who is seeing that. And this is also a big difference from how ZK works, right? Because ZK works by you keeping the so-called witness data private, which is, you can imagine, is the data that you need to generate the zero knowledge proof that you can use on chain or for other uses. But you need to take good care of this data. If you lose this data, you cannot regenerate your proof, and you cannot access what you want to access. And this shifts the burden on the users to also take care not only of their private keys, which is already a big enough problem, but also of the private data now. And FHE takes a different approach. It says everything can be public because everything is encrypted. So even if you go and look into our data lake, you're not going to find anything unless you have the key that can decrypt this data. And the beautiful thing of Zama is that they solve the problem in a way that allows you not only to be the owner of a piece of data, but also to delegate view access to other people without passing to you. So you delegate access to your data. And when you delegate access to your data, now you have the ability to work with banks, with regulators, with financial institutions, with any third party that needs reassurance about what you're doing. And they are able to, don't take your word for it, but just go on the protocol and get cryptographic proof that whatever you're doing is in line with their requirement, which of course are different from every company, but they can go and verify. And that makes a big difference. And that is what made it possible for RayCash to sit down and talk with the financial institutions that are now much more comfortable to deal with us than before, because they understand the model and they can see how the model can help them. This is also much better than, for example, what happens already with the other companies, like, for example, you can think of exchanges, right? So when you have a crypto exchange, they are, like, from the point of view of a regulator, they are black boxes. So there is, of course, a compliance officer in every exchange. You hope that they do everything correctly. But when the regulator goes to them and says, did Valerio do anything strange? They give an answer, and then they might even give some receipts, some logs. But eventually, there is a trust into the exchange for the exchange not to not to cook their books and not to lie about their data, right? It's very unlikely that the regulator is going to go into the Grafana board and check exactly what is happening in an exchange. So there is a trust level, and FHE makes it possible to remove the trust level between companies and regulators. So now we just give to the regulators the ability to check that themselves. And that, I think, has been the door opener for many of the conversation that we were having. I think that we are in an inflection point with finance, and I think that FHE is going to be the dominant way of doing private finance in the world, because stablecoins work perfectly for this.
Yeah, that's very interesting, very, very technical as well. I think my follow-up question is regarding the user experience. Like for the user, is there some I don't know, trade-off he needs to do? It's convenient, it's hard to use, it's transparent, it's just like a button. How do you see this trade-off of convenience and complexity and the access of this services that is going to allow? If you can paint a picture of that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is that if we didn't tell you that this uses FHE, you will never know. So from the point of view of a user that is using the app, this looks just like any other banking application where you have a balance, when you can receive some stable coins and you can send to other people. And of course, we are targeting a crypto audience, so there will be more functions than just a normal banking app. So there will be yield, there will be confidential swaps, there will be other crypto things, but yeah, from the point of view of the user experience, it is very similar to a very good banking experience. We keep. I mean, I'm European, so for us the top level example always is Revolut, and that is what we look at as a great banking experience, and we aim at that level of UX for our users. And we're not that far in the experience. I think it's first of all amazing the fact that I could give you my phone, you could use RayCash, and you would not know that this app uses stablecoin. We have made the decision to abstract as much as possible all the blockchain details. So you will not see, unless you go in the third page in your settings, things like transaction hash. You will not see things like block explorers, private key, all these more advanced settings that you will see, for example, in a wallet. So you don't hear about gas, you don't hear about gas costs and all this stuff, blocks. All of that is abstracted away, and I think that it is refreshing, because also crypto people, I think that if they need to use their app for their main finances, they want something that resembles a bank. There is also, I think, some extra, how do you want to call it, some mental burden when you use an app that is very complicated, that can do a lot of things, that is showing you your balance going up and down with 50 different tokens. And that there is a time and a space for that. And I use all of that. I'm sure we all use those apps. But I don't want to open my MetaMask wallet with all the different NFTs and Pepe and meme coins and all the other things when I'm going to buy a coffee. I think that they live in completely different worlds. And the same is when I want to be paid. I don't want to be paid in my, keep privacy aside, of course, that we already covered that ground, but even in the way that I can control, for example, all my payments, I can do maybe reconciliation to know if my salary has arrived in time and all that. Wallets don't do that. So we recreated more that experience of feeling like you're using a real bank.
Yeah, that's pretty good. From my experience, I'm let's say a crypto native, but I'm still looking for convenience and that feeling of like every time I'm going to do a crypto transactions, I sweat and like like
Yeah.
it's not easy. It's very easy to make mistakes, and then there's the whole public part. Like you need to, oh, this is important to keep it to create another wallet and thinking how not to connect with my personal life. So that there's a whole complexity around it, and within the banking app is like it's easier. But I think you mentioned about there is a trusting factor to use Zama, and this is the trade-off that we are doing to accommodate the 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 convenience. Let's say, is that right? How does it work? This trusting component to make it work.
Yeah. So this is a great question, and we get it a lot in terms of what is the our what are the trust assumptions with RayCash and with the with Zama in general. The idea is that, of course, everything, even the most trustless system, have a trust assumption they just pushed a bit higher, right? And
Yeah.
Even Bitcoin, we trust that the mathematics holds, for example. And FHE is a very special case because differently from other differently from, for example, other privacy technologies like DEE, where we trust the producer of the chips. FHE is more similar to ZK in the sense that it is fully based on mathematics. So we are, first of all, the what holds in FHE is the mathematics behind it, which is public, which is battle tested, and so far also quantum proof. So we have that quite sound. The other trust assumption that we need to consider, and this I might go a bit in detail about how FHE works, because I mentioned before that FHE works by encrypting your data such that it can be computed. But the question is, how do you encrypt this data? Who holds the private key to encrypt this data? And in a naive FHE system, I would have the private key to encrypt the data, and that will make it impossible to be computed with other people's private keys. So for the system to work, everything needs to be encrypted under the same private key. And so what Zama made in terms of innovation, and what they worked very hard for, is to create a system that allows everybody to work under the same set of keys, such that there is a public key that is public, and everybody encrypts with that key. But then the protocol has a set of validators that has each one of them a shard of the private key, and that a minimum threshold of these validators is necessary, such that the private key can be recomposed and used to decrypt the data when it's necessary. The trust assumption is, of course, in these validators not to collude between them. And there has been a lot of work done with Zama and to prevent that. There is, of course, just to start with, a reputational set of validators. We often forget how important reputation is. We live in the real world, and we are very careful about our reputation. Sometimes it's literally everything we have. But at the same time, there are other technology and guarantees that Zama has put in place to make sure that it would be impossible or very, very difficult, and most importantly, noticeable if people were to collude in the system. So that's where the trust assumption relies in the Zama protocol. On the RayCash side, we talk about RayCash as a banking app, similar to a bank, not only because of the ability to give you a card and to have a bank account, but also because just like your bank, we need to see your data. And what we often say is that we give you the privacy guarantee of your bank, but the custody guarantees of your wallet. So the good thing with RayCash is that we act as a delegated viewer of your money, and that is necessary to run all the compliance checks on the deposits, to make sure that our privacy tools are not used for bad reasons, and also to offer to our users a very good user experience, because you open the app and you see all the data has been decrypted and cached for you. So you don't need to wait for decryption. You don't need to decrypt every single piece of data. Everything feels very natural. And yeah, I think that is the trust assumption on the privacy level. But on the custody level, the thing with RayCash is that for example, if we were to discover that you are a user that is persona non grata in RayCash, we don't want to bank with you anymore because you took some money that you stole from an exchange, you deposited into RayCash. We have no ability to freeze your deposits, freeze your money. And all that we can do is freeze your card, means that you cannot go to the coffee and pay with your card, and freeze your bank account, which means freeze your ability to send money, to spend your crypto, to send bank transfers. But we cannot freeze your underlying assets. And that means that if we cut your connection to the RayCash system, you still have the ability to take your money and go out somewhere else. So we cannot rug your money, but we can rug your privacy, in the sense that we can prevent you to take advantage of our privacy for reasons that we are not happy with. And this is a very important nuance, because we feel that the number one thing that people don't like about banks, we are in a time where the trust into banks is very, very low. And the number one reason is not because bank can see my money. It's because bank can prevent me from accessing their money. Nobody is upset with banks because the clerk at the desk can see the balance. That is an unfortunate reality, but everybody's used to that. So we flip that and we say, yes, the privacy is the same, but the custody guarantee is completely different. So we can never prevent you from accessing your money by design. So even if we were asked to freeze your money, there is no freeze button to do that. And there are some reasons why we are able to do that. And the reason is that, of course, we're not custodial, but we're also not an issuer. So since the wrapper around stablecoins is just a smart contract on the blockchain, is unknown, is permissionless, everybody can encrypt and decrypt their stablecoins. The decision that we make is only on which stablecoins to accept and which not, to connect to the real financial world.
Valerio, you gave this beautiful explanation, very complete. But I would like you to go back to the trilemma you mentioned before. How do you connect then RayCash in this trilemma you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we said that we solved the trilemma. Companies apps like RayCash solve the trilemma by giving all three of the things that we want. So you can have privacy, self-custody, and most importantly, banking functions. So this is possible because of the things that I mentioned before. So the selective disclosure, the ability to delegate to other third parties, the view of your data. And in our case, for example, RayCash is one of the people that you delegate that view scope to. And we're excited about solving this trilemma because it's been there for a while, and there are only few other instances that are getting close to solving it. Of course, we're also new. We are learning. We are following with regulations as it evolves. We're also hoping to influence in the positive way by doing education, by participating in roundtables, by talking to the most innovative or regulators or companies. Even the participation in places like Ipêcast is not something that we do necessarily for business development. We do that because we think that we need to foster the environment of people that keep the conversation alive, especially in this market where things feel like people talk about it a bit less, but we don't change our mission with market cycles, right? So we continue doing what we're doing, and Ipêcast is just one of the examples.
That is interesting hearing you say, explaining the idea, because this brings me the idea of thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. Like there's the banking, and then it seems like we go all the way to the decentralization and trustless, and then then we bring back to the synthesis, like how can we make all these technologies, new technologies, new paradigms to work in the real world, because we still have these necessities and privacy and this trilemma that you said we need to build, and maybe different users might prefer another thing, more sovereign, let's say, but it's very interesting to see. And also the idea of, I think Valerio always talks about that, which is like you have bundle, which was like the banking, then you unbundle, so you have like DeFi and many other parts, and then you rebundle into something more modern, or so that's a really interesting way. And I think we usually I usually hear some critics in the crypto world, and usually it's because people created this idea of like this utopian or ideal, and they compare the status quo with this ideal world, which is ideal. It's usually is not possible to reach. It was very, very difficult. So when I'm talking about crypto or all these technologies, because we talk a lot about techno-optimism in this case, you need to compare these new products, these new technologies to the status quo, which is orders of magnitude worse. If you, for example, I don't know, ID, WorldCoin, and there's a lot of people, no, WorldCoin, this technology. But if you compare with the status quo, which is a paper, and there's your data spread in hundreds of databases in places that you have no idea, it leaked several times already, so it's order of magnitude better. So that's the way I like to frame these conversations.
I agree, and I think that we faced that a lot, because we also we position ourselves as realists, right? We want to build something that starts, of course, from an idea, but also ends up being workable in the real world. And is the difference between being efficient or being right? Yeah, you want to be right all the time, but sometimes you just need to be efficient. And you can, in our case, the same experience has been with two things: with privacy, of course, where people say, "Oh, yeah, but there is no perfect privacy if RayCash can see my bank accounts." Yeah, I totally understand it. In fact, we're not selling you perfect privacy. If you want, I can set you up with something with perfect privacy now. I'm very happy for you to use all the tools that are much better if you're looking for perfect privacy than RayCash. Sit at the table with me and I'll set you up on Tornado Cash. I'll show you how to do with CLI. That's not to say that I think only because RayCash is not giving you the perfect privacy, we don't see the value in perfect privacy. So that's where the short circuit in the community sometimes is, in saying, "Oh, you could have done it this other way. and it might have worked. No, there are a lot of steps in the real world if you want to make things usable. And I made the example before of the compliance officer who has a family, has a mortgage, doesn't want to go to jail. There's no amount of idealism you can throw at them to say, oh, okay, then whatever you're doing is fine. No, we need to deal with the real world, and privacy is very important, but there's also, everything is on a spectrum. And when we talk about, and I see that a lot in the crypto world, where we talk about decentralization, when we talk about scalability, when we talk about privacy, none of these things are absolute. All of them live on a spectrum. And privacy is also on a spectrum. And you have to think in terms of sufficient privacy. You don't want perfect privacy for things that are so difficult, even you don't even remember that they exist. You want something that is usable. And this is what we're bringing with RayCash. And the other common objection that we got is, why building another card, right? Not necessarily another card in terms of another crypto card, but another card altogether. So why selling to the devil of banking? Why dealing with banks in the first place? And I said, bro, I get it. But without that, the real world doesn't work. I mean, people need to be spending in their money in something, and that something is the financial world, is the banking, is IBAN, is cards, is Pix in Brazil. And if you don't have those, you don't have the possibility for people to spend their money. So it's maybe some people are happier to be 100% right and perfect all the time, but live in live in a world where only other 10 people can interact with them. But eventually, we need to move towards the idealistic world one step at a time. And I think that the other cool thing that is happening is I see that happening, and I think it's going to be a big leap forward. Is the fact that all these companies that are giving now the ability to spend crypto with their card, that they are making use of stablecoins, they are basically, even if they don't advertise it as such, they are wallet app in people's phones. They are Trojan horses to eventually do the disruption that we want to do to the financial world. Because once enough people have stablecoins in their wallet, once also my parents have stablecoins in their wallet, then it's much easier to convince them to don't go to the bank anymore, because you can just send me the stablecoins, especially if you can do that in a private way. But until we don't reach the critical mass, then there's no going from 1 to 3. You need to pass to 2.
Valerio, and also I think that probably our public is curious on how can they participate. So what's the current status of RayCash, and maybe you can talk a bit about the roadmap. So what's coming? How about that?
Yeah, very, very excited. So right now we are rolling out a private beta, which is invite only. And I invite everybody to register on raycash.xyz to our waiting list, so that they can be notified when new slots are open in the private beta. And we expect to have a public beta, which means everybody can use the app. And as long as they accept some rough corners, then that we expect to have that by Q3 this year. On the roadmap, we do have a lot of exciting stuff. First of all, confidential DeFi. So the ability of earning yield on your confidential deposits, and then also the ability to do confidential swaps. So the idea that you can change your confidential holdings from, for example, from euros to dollars, and do the FX all in confidential. And that is very exciting, because it also opens up an unintended consequence, which is MEV protection. We all read the horror stories of the guy that went to swap something, and then it got put in a sandwich and lost a lot of money for something that looked so trivial. And that would become impossible because from the outside, any miner or any validator would just look at the transaction as any other transaction, would not be able to understand what's going on because the data is encrypted. So that is also an exciting consequence of confidential DeFi. And then, of course, we are not sleeping on the AI revolution, and we are doing some work on. There's a bit of alpha on RayCash. We will announce soon some private agentic payments that I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Hopefully, maybe at Ipê we're gonna be able to show something. So this is the most important milestones in RayCash at the moment. But of course, there's a lot more cooking, and we cannot wait to show you all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to test it and use it and see how it works. But I'm curious to pick your brain on new use cases for this infrastructure, because payments it's a large one, but we are talking about, for example, in Ipê, we like to bring references and new ideas to open the mind of people, because we are not used to think in innovation in governance. We take it for granted, like voting and these kind of things. So I know there is like opportunities to use with ID, with voting, with access, and this kind of interactions between people. Do you think about that? Do you have ideas? How is this? What's the implication of this in the long term?
Yeah, I think that governance is probably the most exciting after finance, because it's a beautiful coordination problem, and we still have not solved that in a way that everybody says we solved it. So everybody has an opinion about it, and I think that new cryptographic technologies like FHE can bring some innovation and new use cases. I think that voting is going to be super important. Is a great example. The applications are actually immense when you think about the concept of FHE. One with even to go further to what is possible today, but what we expect to be possible in 10 years is the use case for confidential inference in AI. Right now, we do have, everybody uses AI, but every time you send a prompt, the prompt is staying in some log, in some server, so that basically we are prompting away all our lives to these companies that are providing great value, but they're also taking a lot of our private information. They promise us not to use it to train new models, but nevertheless, it's still in their servers. So what FHE makes possible is to have confidential inference such that you can write a prompt to ChatGPT, and not even ChatGPT knows what you ask and what the servers have responded. So I think that there is a phenomenal use case, especially seeing how ubiquitous AI is already today, and if you think where AI is going to be in the next 10 years. Another that is less finance in terms of not necessarily payments or money, but more in the terms of companies, which is also kind of governance, if you want, is about shares. We have not been able to do a lot of crypto stocks, securities, because of the lack of privacy. Unless you want to go to private ledgers or ad hoc systems that do that in their private ecosystems. But if you want to have Nasdaq on Ethereum, you cannot, because everything will be public. So that is another amazing use case that FHE can bring. And another one that I think about, which is less fundamental in the world, but still something that we're getting used to, is prediction markets. Right now, prediction markets are used as, to use a term to make it sound nicer, is a price discovery mechanisms, right? Crowd pricing, as they call it. But it could be also a way for you to make edge bets against some outcomes without other people to know. I think that there will be a lot of development on that side as well, because predicting outcomes and betting on outcomes, with the good and the bad, of course, that would enable also bad behaviors like insider trading, but it also protects people from being attacked because they make a position that maybe goes against what is publicly acceptable. If I go and bet against the Italian government, maybe there's something that I don't want that to be public. So I want to be able to make that prediction instead of always nodding their head and say, yes, everything's going to be fine. So FHE is going to expand also in those use cases. But in general, you can think that everywhere there is computation, eventually FHE can catch up with that.
Cool. I'll hand the mic to André to expand some questions. But a last questions on the technical side is this encryption has some performance impact, or it's very, very fast?
Yes, so it does. There is some impact, because you need to encrypt the data. You need to generate zero knowledge proof that you encrypted the correct data, and that takes some time. And also, the computation over encrypted data is something that is very heavy, and that's why, for example, Zama as an ecosystem needs to run very big servers to run the computation. The good thing is that when we talk about very difficult, though, we need to always, as I said before, apply scalability as a spectrum. Right now, we don't need to today to do Visa, or as they call it, Visa scale, or type of payment output. But right now on the Zama protocol, it's already possible to do FHE for every single block on Ethereum and still have computation to spare. So even if Zama were to run all the Ethereum blockchain, that would still be fast enough to have some computation to spare. The other good thing of the Zama protocol is that it is horizontally scalable. So since the operation can be parallelized, you can just add more compute to make it faster. So then the bottleneck is not anymore the computation, but other things like network, for example. But the next evolution that you're going to see, that is also coming with Zama, is when we are going to have ASICs dedicated only to fully homomorphic encryption. Because right now we started with the CPUs, then we move into GPUs, and then the next step is going to be ASICs only to run fully homomorphic encryption. And the prediction is that is going to be much bigger than everything that we need right now.
Great. André, do you have more questions?
Yeah. Oh, I fell, but I'm back. So I lost the last moments. But actually, I would like to ask a quick question. What do you think is the biggest difficulty right now? Is it in the regulatory side or in the technology side, by what you are feeling?
Oh man, as an engineer, technology is never the most difficult part, because you feel you have control over it. At least you have a challenge, and you feel like it depends on you and the people that you surround with, and it depends on your team, depends on the people that you're building with. So I feel that it is great to have very difficult technological challenges, because that also what keeps a company and a project very interesting. The real problem is, as you mentioned, regulation and perception, because we have no big control over that. And we are just, and we feel that we are always one big change away from things to swing it entirely in the opposite direction that we want. Think of black swan events, like, for example, FTX. When that happened, oh, now all the crypto exchanges are bad. Now all the people that touch crypto, etc., etc. When the same applied to Tornado Cash when it got sanctioned. Now all the privacy protocols are all bad. If you touch Tornado Cash, you're a terrorist, you're a criminal. So there are all these things that are outside of our control, that doesn't matter how good of an engineering team you can assemble, you're always going to depend on these black swan events that you cannot control. They can just mitigate the risk for when they happen.
Perfect. Well, we covered my notes here, Jean. How about you?
No, amazing. That's this idea of having competitive jurisdictions is that's why we are building IP actually, and there's now many others like way more advanced than us, like Prospera and this kind of diverse jurisdictions is going to help protect these projects, mainly those who are more techno optimists and more. So that's the idea of network states and startup cities. I think it's going to help these projects more in the frontier, because it's important to have some stability and combine like having legal stability to accommodate the oscillation of the technology, because LLMs or even biotech, you need some kind of resistance to, like, oh, you put some therapy into the market and it didn't work, so you come back and test again, or some technology, and that's why it's important to have this, I think, this competition. But that was amazing conversations, Valerio. We are very excited to host you in the Ipe Village. For those who don't know, he's coming to Florianopolis. He's going to host a workshop about Zama and all this technology that we mentioned here. So I'm organizing Ipe just because there's no Ipe here in Brazil, so I need to organize so I can bring people to learn and to have these experiences. So I'm looking forward to participate in the workshop and try to apply this technology within the village and our use cases, real use cases. And also now with vibe coding and cloud code and Replit and all these tools, is like we can do one prototype a day or even more. Like it's like very, very fast, very productive. So I think we are going to try many solutions, and that's it. Thank you, Valerio. Thank you, André. Ipe Village is going to happen from April 6th to May 1st. I will put the link here. Ipe.city Village 2026. I think it's going to be amazing. Many great builders, speakers, thinkers, policymakers, scientists. We are mixing many people here to discuss it, to prototype these new tools, this new governance services. So looking forward to meeting all you there. Thanks, Valerio. See you there.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you both.
Thank you for
Amazing.
coming, Valerio.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jean.
Bye-bye, guys. See you next week.